Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing, and we are using the home opener for Sporting Kansas City this evening as I speak in order to provide the platform to revisit one of the most unbelievable conversations we've had in the history of Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. I've done so many of these now, and they have been so much of a joy, and I've learned so much about a variety of interesting people. But some of them just stand out a little bit more than others, and certainly Peter Vermes is two parts, as it turned out, in two parts of well up an hour or more. Had so many interesting stories and tales. In part one, we had only proceeded up to the point where Peter Vermes was about to be a professional soccer player, and now in part two, you'll get to hear the rest of the story, which is his travels to Europe, and then eventually coming to MLS, and then eventually converting himself from a forward where he'd scored gazillions of goals from his youth times all through his professional career into one of the best defenders in MLS, and in fact, one year, the best defender in MLS, and then on to his coaching career and more. A vivid storyteller with an unusual gift for making you feel like you're the most important person in the room. Peter Vermes has no doubt done hundreds of interviews, and during this particular interview, I got the feeling that this was the best interview he'd ever done. Well, I'll tell you what, probably they all are. But you'll enjoy part two. I'm sure if you caught part one, you are raring to go to hear our Kansas City Profile with Peter Vermes here on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing, and boy, we had to negotiate a million things in 2020, but Easton Roofing navigated them all. As 2021 rolls out, what should we expect this coming storm season?
Well, Danny, it'll be the same thing as it is every year. The storms come, and you've got the guys out knocking on doors offering quote-unquote free inspections. Be wary as a homeowner. If somebody's knocking on your door, they probably need the work, and if they need the work that bad, they may be willing to do something untoward to get it. So if somebody knocks on your door, says they want to give you a free inspection, just tell them have a great day and give us a call. We'll come out for free and give you a good, honest opinion as to whether or not you need to do anything at all with your roof.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Easton Roofing?
You can always find us online at eastonroofing.com or give us a call at 913-257-5426.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. The bitter cold snap in February was just another intense reminder of how important it is to have a quality heating and cooling company on your side. That's why you need to know about my friends at Dillon's Heating and Cooling. Jeff Dillon and his top-quality staff provide honest, affordable, and reliable service all year long. Their number one priority is taking care of the customer and focus on being genuine, always following through and standing behind what they say and do. If you need HVAC or AC repair, it's important you get help from a team of professionals. Dillon's Heating and Cooling's team can walk you through a range of products, the advantages of heating and cooling systems, and ultimately help you find the best HVAC system for you. They're always glad to answer your questions and set up an appointment for an installation consultation. Whether you're looking to upgrade to a newer model of your current system or need one installed in a new home, give my friends at Dillon's Heating and Cooling a call today at 913-214-0529. That's 913-214-0529, or visit dillonsheatingandcooling.com to answer all of your questions. Dillon's Heating and Cooling. Their slogan is their goal, always treating you like family. I'm here with David Schmidt from Private Capital. And David, tell us more about your outstanding firm.
Thanks, Danny. Here at Private Capital, we focus on return on asset. In today's world, it is survival of the fittest. We look at things from all angles and try to figure out what works best for you. The changes we will see this next year on assets will be monumental. The key to success is knowledge. Know where you want to go, and we'll be here along the way. To find out more, give us a call at 816-221-7775.
David Schmidt from Private Capital with the best service for you. We're here with Michael Barber, the CEO and founder of Microlite Corporation of America, the world leaders in laser therapy. And Michael, tell us a little bit about your product.
Our device is using a particular wavelength and power to reduce pain and swelling. My background is surgical lasers, but I've been involved with this particular device now for about the last 20 years, actually.
And I know that it works because I've had it
There
used on me as well. And tell us about the relationship you have with your company in Canaway.
It's what I call a strategic business relationship, in that Canaway, the leader in the field of the cannabinoid systems and CBD oil, but our device used in conjunction with Canaway CBD oil gives a better pain relief outcome for the patient.
And if you want to get that pain relief outcome like I did, you can reach their local representative, Sherry McCants, at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Peter, back when you were finishing up your college career, which was certainly incredibly accomplished, you were the runner-up for National Player of the Year and first-team All-American. The landscape of soccer for an American person, an American player, was certainly very, very different. What were your thoughts at that point in time, having spoken with you many times and doing the first part of the profile? It seems like you almost certainly were going to pursue a career in soccer, but that was no certainty as far as a person who was married and was going to start a family and everything else. What was your thought process right then?
Well, it's amazing, right? Timing is always everything. And so I got fortunate enough. I went to the Olympic Festival in 1987. At that time, there was an Olympic Festival, and it was in North Carolina in the Triangle. And so I was playing on the East team, and we were training every day prior to the actual event. And one of the days, the U.S. national team, Olympic team coach, Lothar Osiander, came in, and he wanted to coach each team for a day, which was pretty innovative back then, because I know for myself, even anytime that we go and acquire a player, the one thing that I don't have is I don't have intimate knowledge of what the player's like inside the white lines. Now, we do investigating, and we obviously talk to a lot of people, do all those things, but at the end, you really don't know until you work with that person. The fact that he was smart enough to say, hey, I'm going to go coach these guys and see what it's like with them in a training session. So he came and did my team, and from that point, I got chosen to go and play with the national team for the first time not too long thereafter. And what that did was it opened me up to a much bigger world from a professional perspective. And so I finished, I finished my college soccer career in, November of 87. And then come January 1, I already signed professionally with the New Jersey Eagles. And then I was already playing games with the Olympic team. And what that really did was the Olympic team opened me up to all these opportunities. And we just so happened before the 88 Olympics, we played a tournament in Lille, France. And I was leaving the field where I had just scored the game-winning goal at this tournament we're in. And as I was walking into the locker room, there was a guy amongst people in kind of that corridor, if you will, and he said to me in Hungarian, he said, my last name in Hungarian is pronounced Vermes, and he basically said, Vermes, do you speak Hungarian? And caught me by surprise, because I do, and I turned to him and I said, yeah, and he said, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. And I said, well, I got to go to the shower, and I'm done. When I come out, I'll chat with you. So I came out. He wound up being Hungarian, but he lived in Belgium. He's an agent, and said, hey, after the Olympics, I want to bring you over here for some tryouts. And that was totally different, right? Today you get acquired and all stuff, but that's what an American player had to do.
Right.
And so I played in the Olympics, whatever, called me up immediately after, already had a tryout set up for me for Standard Liège in Belgium. And he said, but I'm going to take you to Hungary for 3 weeks of just training with a professional team to kind of get you up to the speed of the European game, and then I'll take you over the tryout so you have the best tryout you can have. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I got taken out by the general manager, the coach, and, this person that was acting sort of as an intermediary, and kind of set up this opportunity. And he was explaining that, hey, guys, look, this is going to be a great opportunity for you because, as he put it, I have a Hungarian-American, not an American-Hungarian here. You guys can use the publicity of that coming here to train with you guys for the next, 2-3 weeks. And then we're going to leave and we're going to go to Belgium because I have a tryout there for him. And we're really excited about it. Great. A few interesting anecdotes is I come into the locker room and all the guys are looking at me like, who is this guy? And I was a pretty fit guy, I was pretty. Right. I've always been. It's been a big part of who I was as a player, and so I had 2 guys on each side of me. And they were younger guys. One of them actually works here at Sporting Kansas City today, Hungarian player who we played together. Anyway, so. I took a shirt off, and one guy says it. They don't know who I am yet. Nobody introduced me. They don't know I speak
right.
Hungarian. So the one guy says to the other, he says, "What kind of milk does this guy drink?" And so whatever, I get changed. I sit there, and all these guys are talking, and I can hear I understand all the things that they're saying,
and they don't necessarily know that you understand.
Correct. And
it's almost like a movie
yeah,
setting for a movie.
And what's great is that I'm immediately getting some incredible education because I'm realizing that they're not happy because, first off, they don't know who I am, and you can see that it's now it's almost like the insecurities are coming out. Like, are they bringing this guy? Did they assign this guy? Is he taking my job? Which position does he play? Like, all these things are happening.
And you're also, especially for then, you're a big man for a soccer player.
Yeah,
I was, especially you weren't a defender then.
No, that's correct. And so the coach comes in and explains to everybody who I am, and now they all realize that I speak Hungarian, and the guys like, they couldn't believe it, right?
That's funny.
We go out, so we have training.
Right.
So interestingly enough, the way their setup is they had their stadium and their training complex at the same place. And we go out to training, but we went right to the stadium field. And they had a scrimmage game set up with the first team and basically their second team.
Right.
And so right away, I get thrown into the lineup of the second team. And
right.
Now we're playing against each other. And this is not an exaggeration, I'm playing center forward for 7 minutes. I've not touched the ball because nobody has passed me the ball because they don't want me to do well.
Right.
Because they don't know why I am there yet.
Right. So they don't know that you ostensibly weren't really trying out for their team.
I was just training.
Right.
There. Right. I finally, a guy on my team gets the ball, and I come from the side of him, and I shoulder him off the ball, and I just take the ball. And I kid you not, I go on about a 40-yard dribble and hit a shot, and I hit the crossbar, and it goes over the goal. And from that point, they start playing me the ball. A few minutes after that, the first team scores on us. I'm going to make this quick now. A few minutes later on, I score, tie the game.
Right.
We've probably played at this moment 12 minutes. After I scored, the coach, we're coming back to kick off. The coach says, hold on before you kick off. He points to this guy over here on the first team, and he says, hey, take your bib off. He texts to me, and he says, you put the bib on. And now I go to the first team.
Right.
And I wind up scoring in about, less than 10 minutes.
Right.
I score. So imagine we've now played roughly, let's just say 24 minutes, somewhere in that range.
Right.
Blows a whistle. Practice is over. Go in, get in the shower. I'm thinking, I can't believe that practice is this short. I didn't expect this at all. A guy comes in and says, "Hey, when you're finished, could you please go to the general manager's office? Go in there," and they offered me a contract. And so I had to decide what I was going to do. And at the end, I decided to stay. And the reason being is because I understood the language. I thought it would be a lot easier for me to go there than it would be Belgium because I already know kind of the culture.
Right.
And this was real. I mean, I had a contract sitting on it was for first division. And so that's kind of how I ended up in Europe and Hungary being my first place.
Do you remember the figure?
Yeah. So there's two things to remember.
Right.
First, Hungary was still communist.
Okay.
Now, that's a big thing to remember. Second, there wasn't a euro. It was their own their money, which was called the forint.
Right.
And so their money was like monopoly money because it didn't do anything for me. And if you wanted to exchange it over into American dollars, it was very difficult because it was a communist country.
Right.
The great thing is that the club was, the name of the club was Raba Eto in a city called Győr. Raba was a international, like almost like a John Deere kind of company.
Oh, okay.
They manufactured huge industrial, farming equipment, but they sold it internationally. So the great thing is they dealt in American dollars.
Nice.
So what they did was they gave me part of my money in American dollars, and then I always called it the money that I just went out and bought things with because I could never do anything with that money later on.
You were forced to spend it.
And so what was it? My contract at that time was about $50,000.
Pretty good money right away.
It was not. It was actually pretty good. Yes, it was pretty good.
Right.
But what's amazing is that throughout my career, I mean, my final year in Major League Soccer, my salary was probably like $135,000.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I wasn't complaining at the time,
right?
But comparatively speaking to where we sit today,
right,
totally different world.
No,
but I always loved what I did, so it was. I was lucky anyway.
What was your family situation like at that point in time?
So, as for me personally, you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was my girlfriend.
Still your girlfriend.
She was my girlfriend, and we had a long distance relationship. And so that was in 1988, 89.
Right.
And what happened from there is a team from Holland came to watch me play in Hungary, and I got offered a contract to go there the next season. The Hungarian team, I only did a deal for the rest of that year on purpose.
Okay. I
did not want to tie myself up, especially when I knew the World Cup was coming.
Right.
And so I then signed So I wind up. So the Hungarian team, midway point through, they offered me a 3-year deal, and they're trying the whole time to get me to sign.
Right.
And I did not sign. I waited. I then signed in Holland a 1 year with a 1 year option. And again, I chose to do it that way.
Right.
After the first game of the season in Holland, the next season, which was 89-90 year. After my first game of the season, they offered me a 4-year deal, and I didn't sign it because I was banking on the World Cup.
Right.
And so,
were you banking on the World Cup from a personal standpoint that you were betting on yourself?
I was betting on myself.
Right.
Absolutely, I was betting on myself to get to
raise your profile,
bigger club, and all of that. Absolutely, and. But that's kind of been the story of my life, right? Is I've always believed in betting on myself, and that's kind of, I don't know, it's probably upbringing, some of that. But the thing about it is it actually worked at the end. I mean, it did, which I can speak to. But finishing up on the Holland piece is that, so when I was in Holland, when I went home, basically for that Christmas is when, at that point, I asked my wife, or who is now my wife, if she would marry me. It was at that time.
Was there an understanding that you were going to play internationally at that point in time? Because you would for a few more years after that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a long talk before she made that decision as well. I mean, she said yes, but at the same time, I said I want to be clear that, I'm staying in Europe, I'm playing, and she always knew that that's what I was going to do. But my wife is incredibly intelligent. She isn't anymore. Well, she is, but she isn't. She was CPA,
right?
And so when I was playing, like an example, she didn't move with me in Holland because I had finished and then came back to the States and then eventually went to Spain.
Right.
And when I went to Spain, obviously she came with me, and she was working for Deloitte at that time, and she actually wound up working in the London office. So she would work in the London office Monday through Thursday and then fly back to Spain and meet me. And she did that for about half the year. And then eventually it was like this, this is too much for her.
Although for people who aren't there, I mean, people do that stuff all the time in Europe.
Correct. And we were also, just married. So it was like, hey, we could spend this time together in the country. So that's how it kind of worked.
Right.
But she was always 100% in on my career.
We'll talk about continuing on in Europe, but this is the time where you did say you wanted to bet on yourself, and in reading about a couple of profiles by different Sams from the Star through the years, a long time ago, Sam Mellinger wrote one, and you highlighted the fact that you thought your life would have been incredibly different if you had scored a goal against Italy, which it seemed a certainty as the play played out. And do you truly believe that your life's path would have been that much different?
I'm not saying it would be better.
Right.
I don't think it would be better. I honestly don't.
Different.
I think I'm where I'm at because I'm supposed to be where I'm at, right? That's what I believe. I do think it would have been different just because I think what would have happened is that I was at that time, I was the only American playing in Europe.
Right. Really?
Yes.
The only one?
Yes. I was the only one on the U.S. national team at that time. So already I was different from the rest. And I was getting a lot of publicity while I was playing in Holland leading up to the World Cup.
Right.
And now when we got to the World Cup, it was obviously a story that I was playing in Holland, and here's the guy and all the rest of his teammates are playing, in the United States. So that already was a focus. And
right.
And so, I remember even saying to the Italian journalist after the game, if I would have scored today, I'm sure that we would be talking about 2 weeks from now about which team in Italy I'd be signing for, because that is the way it worked back then,
right?
With a lot of players playing in the World Cup, it still does to some extent.
American World Cup star signs with
correct, and so, but I don't know if it would be better. I think that I also say this too, and that is, first off, let's get something clear. The shot wasn't that easy. The goalkeeper actually made somewhat of a save. The ball was trickling in, and a guy cleared it off the line. And then the final piece to it is we really didn't deserve to tie that game. The other team was that much better. So
right.
For me, from a purist in the game,
right,
and being a coach and knowing that there's a lot of games you lose when you should win or what have you, this is one of those games where we did not deserve it.
Sort of like the World Cup game where Tim Howard made 8 million saves.
Correct. It was inevitable that the team was going to.
But the other part of it was that this is like the most, renowned keeper in the world at the time.
It was. And then he actually came to MLS and played in Major League Soccer. So, but yeah, it was a great environment.
Yeah. How? What was your national team experience like as a whole, and what was it like being in the World Cup then as an American, as what you think of it now? Of course, they didn't even play in the World Cup last time, but there have been some high moments like the previous World Cup that I just referenced. What was it like?
There's so many different emotions. The first is that, look, this is something that no American team had done in 40 years. We qualified for the World Cup. And I remember, I was in the game, I was on the field in Trinidad and Tobago, and when we qualified, and I remember all of us thinking to ourselves, like, I can't believe we're going to the World Cup. I mean, this is unbelievable, right? These are
right.
We watched the game whenever we could. We watched the World Cup wherever we could. When it was, it was on TV anywhere. We'd go to different satellites and try to find it. I mean, it's amazing the places we would go to watch a game. So now the fact that we were going to play in that was incredible. Getting there, playing in those games was, in a lot of respects, surreal. It was, in some respects, we were extremely naive because we didn't have any experience in any of that stuff, and we didn't have any guys ahead of us that could mentor us or bring us along. We were just, here we go, we're forging through this. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of guys from my class, that group of guys at that time, are still involved in very high positions in soccer today, because of what they were able to go through at that time has propelled them forward into still being involved in the game at very high levels. And then the final piece, it was an incredible achievement as a soccer player to know that you reached the epitome of what every single soccer player thinks in their mind. If you ever came to a player and say, would you want to play in the World Cup? There's guys that would say to you, some guys would give up club championships just to get to the World Cup if their team could qualify.
Right.
And there's a lot of good players that their teams never qualify.
Right.
So that's it was a tremendous experience.
So after the Olympics, you would play a little bit for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. What was that decision to come back to America? Because you would subsequently leave and stay in Europe again for a long time. So this is what happened. So right after the World Cup, having bet on yourself,
I got offered a contract for 5 years in Switzerland, 5-year contract for a club called Neuchâtel's MX. Doesn't exist today now. Beautiful place. I flew there, did my contract in the lounge of a bar, and I was with the president and what you would call his sporting director. He wrote the terms of the deal on a cocktail napkin, left the meeting while we still sat there, went to the office, drew up the terms from the cocktail napkin, came back with the contract, received it, came back to the United States, signed it, was under contract. The problem is back then, as you know, in Major League Soccer, we're only allowed 8 foreign players on our team. Right? Now, if they're a green card holder, that changes things, or an American citizen, that's different as well. So back then it was only 3. The issue was the team I signed with already had 3. So they were looking to sell at least one of those guys, move them on, and then I would now occupy that spot. So a month goes by, and the spot's not
being vacated.
Hasn't happened yet. And so now the months start to, tick away, and they still haven't gotten rid of a guy. And they're trying. And
Are
again,
they paying you at this point?
Yeah. The mechanisms back then weren't the same as it is today all over the world. And so I finally said, listen, I'm just going to go back to the United States. I can play with the national team on a full-time basis. And during that time, once the player is gone, then I'll come back over. And so we're about 7 or 8 months in, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And so we voided the contract. I voided the contract. I didn't want to do that anymore. And oddly enough, so we go into the first, my first ever was the Concacaf Gold Cup they created.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the captain. We go and play in that tournament. We actually win the first ever Concacaf Gold Cup for the United States. I score a couple goals and wind up Tab Ramos, who was a teammate of mine, wasn't in the competition. He was playing in Spain. He had just played there a year. Gave me a call and said, hey, my coach has watched you on video and is interested in signing you here. Would you come if they signed you? How many foreign slots do you have? And how many foreigners do you have? Told me they had a spot. I said, yeah, I'd be interested. And like that, I got a contract, and off to Spain I went.
And you stayed with that club, Figueres, is that the way it's pronounced?
Yep.
For 4 years. How was that experience?
Figueres was excellent. It was excellent because, it was just a whole different way of seeing the game. For me, what I got of Hungary, Holland, and Spain, all different cultures living, different cultures of soccer, learned something different from each one of the coaches I had at those places. And you don't know this, but so obviously I had a lot of time on my hands, and I wasn't in my home country, so I'd go to practice and then I'd come home. Well, I created a book that every single one of my training sessions, I took incredible detail and kind of created a booklet of all the training sessions that I did. And it was a great learning experience for me. So like an example, when I was in Holland, I met the way I got into Holland and the way the team came and saw me play is a whole nother story. But basically, I was playing in Hungary, and in the winter break, we had a winter break. I was asked to go play for the Futsal World Cup, the first ever Futsal World Cup championship. And it was in Holland. And so when we went there, our coaching staff were close with a guy who had been a professional goalkeeper in Holland. He was now getting into training goalkeepers. Back then, there wasn't a thing called like a goalkeeper coach.
Right.
There were just guys that kind of dabbled in it. And most teams didn't have a full-time goalkeeper coach. Anyway, he worked with our goalkeepers. He saw me play in the Futsal World Cup, told the town in which he lived in, which was Volendam. He told the club there, he's like, hey, there's a guy that you need to go watch. He plays in Hungary, played with us in the Futsal World Cup. You guys might really like him. And that's how they came to see me play. Well, his name is Franz Hook. Franz Hook has been the goalkeeper coach for PSV Eindhoven, Ajax, FC Volendam. Then he went to Bayern Munich with Van Gaal. He went to Manchester United with Van Gaal. He's coached in the World Cup, goalkeeper coach for the World Cup of Holland. I mean, he's a renowned goalkeeper coach around the world. Anyway, so these relationships and that I was able to create. And so I used to go with him when he would. So imagine, can you imagine this? Imagine having a goalkeeper coach. It would be like saying, I'd say a little better for American football people. So you have a quarterbacks coach for Mahomes, and there's no such thing as really a full-time quarterbacks coach. So he would work with Mahomes, and then he'd fly to the 49ers and work with Garoppolo, and then he'd fly, he'd fly around the country working with different guys. Well, that's what Franz did. But when he would go, and I was in training, I would go with him, and I would get a chance to go to say Ajax, right? And historically an unbelievable club, and I would go there. I would go with him, and while he was working with the first team, I would go watch their academy and see how that they were doing things in their academy. And I would take notes, and that's the education that I got from that, which was tremendous.
Were you happy at all times with the finances, playing time, things like that with Figueres? Was that experience good or not?
Finances were tough, meaning that there were 4 months that we didn't get. Myself, Tab, we as players didn't even get paid. And we didn't get paid. We did not get our salary. And just kept this.
Well, now it doesn't matter because they always talk about it when you hear Premier League. The guy's making $250,000 a week. Well, if you make that,
correct.
It doesn't matter if you have 4 months off.
Don't get me wrong. My salary when I received it was good.
Right.
But, for 4 months, I didn't receive it. And so you're just hanging on thinking you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid. Eventually did. But those weren't easy situations to go through. And so even in this job that I do today, I know what it's like where I'll go somewhere and the player hadn't been paid in the last 3 months. Believe me, I can definitely comprehend where his world is. The great thing about our league is that we've never, I always tell players this all the time, and it's a very attractive thing. Major League Soccer is probably the only league in the world, by the way, that has never missed a payment to a player, an agent, or a club. That's pretty amazing because even the English Premier League back in the day missed payments to players.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here once again with Dr. Brad Woodall from Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. Springtime, good weather's finally here. People want to stay active, and it's your job to make sure that they can stay active, and be healthy.
Danny, we see a lot of not just weekend warriors, but people that every day are having that want to get back to activity. Whether you're starting with walking, jogging, or maybe that first 5K of the year, we want to help you out. We specialize in taking care of all ages, from kids all the way to grandmas and grandpas, but absolutely specialize in getting you back to full function and keeping you in great shape.
So in short, how do we go about doing that?
The first thing is to schedule a consultation with one of our doctors and therapists so we can see how you move and how you're supposed to move. Based on our assessment, we can put together a short treatment plan and a set of goals to help you both feel better, function better, and most importantly, stay better for this year and many years to come.
Learn more at asfca.com/Danny. That's asfca.com/Danny.
Right now, it's more important than ever to support local businesses. And 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence is open and ready to take care of you. Make 23rd Street Brewery part of your KU game day experience, whether you watch the game there or grab curbside pickup for your tailgates or watch parties.
But not just game days. 23rd Street Brewery is great any day of the week, and when the weather's nice, you can take advantage of their heaters on the patio. 23rd Street Brewery is open daily from 11:30 to 9 for dine-in, carry-out, curbside pickup, and can even help with your catering needs.
So support local and visit a Lawrence favorite, 23rd Street Brewery.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. So at this point in time, when you're getting to your what would become the end of your time in Figueres, you're approaching 30 years old. So what is your thought process at this time as MLS, as it is constituted today, is about to start?
Yeah, I was just around 28 years old in the league starting, and I actually had incredible aspirations to play, in my hometown club, right, which at that time was the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars.
Right.
And, that was everything to me. It happened. I get there, I'm with the team. It's the start of the league. It's the first year. It's not an easy year just because it's all new. Everything's. They're trying to build this thing in 2 days, right?
Right.
Just everything. And you can just imagine. The staffs didn't have anybody on the staff. They didn't have what we have today, like team administrators help with all the travel, and there just wasn't anything. And so there was a lot of disorganization in those clubs. But a lot of us didn't really pay too much attention to it because it was the best thing that we had.
And also, you were getting a chance to play your game in your country.
Correct.
So you'd had the European experience, and you'd had enough of it.
I did.
Guess.
I did. And I was also living 5 miles from where I grew up. By the way, I traveled one way to training was 63 miles. So I traveled 126 miles to and from every single day for training and for my games. And the reason why is we had just had 2 small children.
Right.
And I wanted to be close to our family. And so, again, I was living 5 miles from where I grew up because I was in South Jersey. This was all taking place in North Jersey. And I was the first one to practice every day, and I was the last guy to leave every day. But I always made it, there, never had a problem with it. But I couldn't have been happier, to be honest with you, at the time. And then so many other things came from that. As soon as that season was over, I played. The league at the time was trying to get Philadelphia to become a team as well. Mm-hmm. I'm from down in that area. They asked me to play on the indoor team there to see if we could help with the
generate some enthusiasm,
interest, and then maybe now move that franchise outdoors. And I was also doing games on ESPN for like Champions League and all these other things. I was commentating. So actually things were really going well. And 1 year later, I got called into the office by not even the office. We're like 2 or 3 days into preseason training. We're in Giant Stadium training, and we have this guy. He's like, his name is Frankie Campagna, and I'm in training. We're playing like 7v7, and we're probably got about 5 minutes left in the game. And he's like, "Oh, Peter, hey." Frankie's a little Italian guy. He's like, "Oh, Peter, come on." I go, "Frankie, we're finished." And the coach on the side, I'm like, "Frankie, we're finishing training. I can't go." And I was the captain of the team.
Right.
And I said, "Just training will be over in a moment." Training's over. Puts me in a cart. We drive down to the underbelly of Giant Stadium, and we're going into like an auxiliary locker room. And I said, "Where are we going?" And he goes, "Charlie's in here, general manager." He's like, "Hey, he wants to talk to you."
Charlie, was that Charlie Stilatano?
It was. And
I hear many, many mornings.
Yeah.
On Sirius.
And I go in there, and Charlie's there, and he's really serious. Like, I can tell he's sitting down. And it's an auxiliary locker room. There's nothing in there. I'm thinking, why are we in our locker room? So I'm thinking he's calling me down to say, "Hey, look, we're getting ready to leave to go to Italy." And Charlie's also Italian. I think he knows a lot of the big clubs. And he's saying, "Hey, look, you're the captain. I want to make sure that all the guys are respectful and the guys are on their best behavior when they're over there. Please make sure, blah, blah." And so he goes, "Hey, why don't you have a seat?" And I go, "Charlie," I said, "No, I'm not having a seat. I just got done training. I don't feel like sitting down." I said, "Man, you're really serious. You act like you just traded me." And you could see on his face, like, serious. And he said, "Well, as a matter of fact, of about like 30 minutes ago, I just traded you to Colorado." I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. Like, my whole world came crashing in on me just because hometown,
right,
living where I lived, all that stuff. I was just thinking, I was thinking about every one of those things in that moment. And so I'm telling you, it was a great experience because of a number of reasons. But one is I understand, and I have a lot of empathy when I have to do that with this job, but I also understand that it's part of it.
Absolutely. So you're still playing forward at this point
I am.
in your career.
Yeah.
So you go to Colorado. That's a couple of years there. Did you feel like the league was getting foothold, and what was your experience like in Colorado?
The league was growing at that moment. It was getting better every year, more organization. There was getting routine, so things were getting better for sure. Colorado was wound up being great, right? Because for a number of reasons, right? I went to a different place. All of a sudden, they really valued me. It was a great time for my wife and I actually with our kids because in some respects, we didn't have all the pressures of family close by.
Right.
So we could really focus in on our family. So that was actually really good. And so, yeah, things were going really well. And that team, first year of the league was 96. I was playing for Metro Stars. 96, Colorado was the worst team in the league that year. I now get traded there. And I'm thinking, and that's on top of all the other stuff.
Right.
And we wound up going to the MLS Cup final that year, which was pretty neat. We lost to DC, at DC, by the way, just by chance at RFK. But it was a great experience, great place to be. And so enjoyed it. And then next thing you know, I knew I was getting traded to Kansas City. They didn't know I knew, but I knew.
There really was agent find out? Or
No, I didn't have an agent.
Oh, okay.
I in my whole entire career, I've
except
not
for
had
that
an agent.
pseudo agent right at the beginning.
There was no tampering back then, and so Brian Bliss, who works with Sporting now,
right?
Brian and I were teammates during the Olympics and the World Cup. Well, Brian had retired and he became assistant coach here. And he called me and said, "Hey, listen, if we traded for you, would you be willing to come here?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So they traded for me. I came here, and it was the best move I could have made.
You were traded for Kerry Zvagnin.
The Colorado, from New York to Colorado,
that was Kerry Zvagnin.
So we were
I forgot
traded
to mention that part.
Yeah, we were traded for each other.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest stories. So when I got traded for. So Kerry just got drafted that year. So they traded Kerry to New York. I went to Colorado, and there was also a player to be named later from Colorado, who wound up being I think it was Sean Francis. I think that's what his name was. He was an international striker. Anyway, so we get traded, and I didn't know Kerry, and I wanted to like tee him up if we were going to play against New York. I was like, I'm coming after this guy, one of those. He didn't play in that game we played. So imagine my first return match was 5 or 6 games into the season, and we're playing in New York. And we won 2-1, and I scored the game-winning goal on a header, which was fantastic.
Sweet.
Yeah. So then, long story short, 3 years later, I get traded to Kansas City. Kerry actually dropped down to the second division at that time from Major League Soccer, which I think it was USL, but it was some form of USL or what have you. And Kerry, and no idea about this. So what happens is I'm going to preseason. Now I got traded. I'm going to preseason. We go to Florida. Get to the hotel. Everybody's flying in that day. Majority of the teams come from Kansas City. I'm coming from Colorado, so we're converging on in the same area. So I get there. I meet a few of the guys. I check into my room. It's maybe like 9:30, 10 o'clock. I go to sleep. So now I don't know all this is going on, but on the backside, and Kerry and I laugh about this all the time. So Kerry's now coming in late. Kerry comes in, checks in the reception desk. Hey, I have to take my thing. And he's ready to leave. He's like, hey, by the way, do I have a roommate? And they're like, yeah, Peter Vermes. And he's like, oh, my gosh. I'm with this guy, like, already, because he knows. And majority of the guys that I was friends with, I've got a lot of really good friends in New Jersey on the Metro Stars. And so when he came in there, like, that guy's going to kill you, one of these. So now the next morning I wake up. He comes in that night. He goes to sleep. I don't wake up. I'm knocked out. he comes in, we wake up in the next morning, because we have training and we have to go to breakfast, and we wake up and Peter Vermes, hey, Kerry Savagnin. Like, oh, okay. But anyway, from that point on, it's amazing how we've been great friends ever since. And, we've been working together for forever.
Tell me about when you switched to becoming a defender. That's very unusual. And I mean, sometimes a guy will go from, being sort of a wing back maybe to a central defender, but you don't often go from striker to defender, basically.
My first experience was in the Metro Stars, and what happened was our first coach got fired, Eddie Fermani. New coach came in, Carlos Quiroz, who, if anyone knows him, he was, for a number of years, was the assistant to Sir Alex Ferguson and won a lot with Sir Alex. Great coach, Portuguese descent. Really learned a lot from him, especially about breaking down film and stuff like that. And so back then, the teams weren't as strong yet. And so Carlos, when he came in, he was trying to figure out, I don't have a very strong team, and I have holes in my team. And so I was the captain. He would come to me.
Seems like you're always the captain.
For the most part, yeah. So he would come to me, imagine, Tuesday prior to the Saturday game, and he'd say, Peter, I got a new challenge for you this week. He goes, this week I want you to play left wing. Next week it was right back. And so I'm playing every single position on the field, and we're about 6 games out from the end of the season. And he comes to me and he's like, look, Peter, we're playing a big game. I need you to play central defender, but I really want you to pay attention to this one player. His name was El Tanque, played for LA Galaxy, Ecuadorian center forward. And he was El Tanque, which is, the tank. You can understand.
Right.
He was really strong, built like a linebacker. And he's like, I need you to focus on this guy. And I said, Carlos, look, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And that's the truth. Like, I'll play wherever you want me to play. But I just got to let you know, my whole life I've been marked. I haven't been the marker. So this is a completely new world to me. And he goes, look, I trust that you'll do this job, whatever. So I do the job. 20 minutes into the game, we're on a corner kick, attacking, and the ball gets cleared, and now it's a foot race between him and I, and they play the ball over the top. Giant Stadium, AstroTurf, ball bounces and goes pretty high. And we're now at this foot race, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to somehow get to this next ball that's bouncing. I got to get to it and just get away from this guy. But the problem is, the way it bounced, it was a little further from us. Instead of me getting it with my foot, the ball comes up a little bit. And so we're running side by side, and I have to head it to get it away because it's really the best thing I could do to get it out. And when I headed the ball, he started to come as well. And I headed the ball, but I also catch him right above his eye, like right where your eyelash is.
Right where a boxer gets cut.
And that thing just, opened like the Red Sea. So he goes down, bleeding everywhere. Ball goes out of bounds, whatever, stoppage of the game. He goes out. We wind up winning the game 3-1. So at the end of the game, I'm sitting in the locker room, tired, probably mentally more than physically because I have never played that position before and I had to be very focused, whatever. And Carlos comes over to me and he sits down and he says, and he's really serious. And I said, Carlos, what's up? And he says, I have to tell you, I have to apologize to you. And I said, about what? He says, because I should have put you in this position 20 games ago. So I finished off the rest of that season playing that position. But oddly enough, when I went to Colorado that next year, I was playing left back, defensive midfielder, and I was kind of in the same world of plugging holes.
Right.
And until the very end of that season, right before the playoffs began, I went to that, and then we went to the final. I went back to the central defender. And then from that point on, I played central defender for the rest of my career. The experience for me is I love playing forward, but I know as a coach today that my makeup is central defender for sure.
Amazing for somebody who scored all that many goals. You would be the defender of the year when the Wizards at that point in time won the MLS Cup. And you would go on obviously to coach an MLS Cup, the only player to do so with the same team. What was it like then? Kansas City, you played in Arrowhead Stadium, and 10,000 people looked like 5, but still a great team. Tony Meola in goal. What was that whole experience like?
So I had been fortunate enough to have had played in front of really big crowds prior to that experience, right? It was interesting when the game started. It was kind of like For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner, right? It's like I forget about everything that's there. I'm just in the game. But there was no doubt there was something missing, because there is what I call, there's a, whether you want to call it environment and ambiance to each and every sporting event. And it's one of the things that I will never lose that sensation that when I come out to a Sporting Kansas City game and I come out after, right as when the game's getting ready to start, and I hear the crowd and I see the crowd, that this place is full. And I mean this, that the hair on the back of my neck stands up, because it means so much to me, having not had that experience as a player on a normal basis that we now have in this league. And so I don't necessarily know if I missed it all the time. I was so excited to be playing the sport that I loved, the sport that I wanted to see successful in this country. I was doing it, and I was making a living doing it. I always felt that I was extremely fortunate to be doing it. But now that I see where it's at today, I would give anything. Like I would give something. I would give money up. I would give something up. If you gave me, I don't want one. I have to be a little greedy. I would say, give me 4 games in Children's Mercy Park, because I do know this one thing. I would not stop running. When the ball went out of bounds, I would beat the ball boy to the ball to get the ball back into play, because I would want to keep the energy so high in that environment. And it would be so easy to do because of the energy from the fans, which we never experienced. But I'm also extremely appreciative of the fact that in those early years, there were the diehards that kept coming, and they believed. It could have been easy for them to just not come. And so I have a strong appreciation for that time period. And I think it's one of the reasons why so many people are still attached to the Kansas City Wizards, because that's how they started. And I truly can understand that.
Yeah, people feel evangelical when they're not, when they're trying to spread the word about a game that people don't really care about in many regards. You are obvious. You had good times with the championship, but some injuries in your time at Kansas City. Eventually, you had to hang it up. How different players, different athletes, different sports, people always talk about it different ways, but most of them say there's some kind of grieving process or difficulty in deciding to give up the game, but some will say, hey, I wasn't physically capable of playing anymore, and so that maybe makes it easier. What was it like for you?
It's a really good question. So one of the things that I did in all the places I played, even when I was in Spain, I was already – so when I was in Spain, I would come back in the summertime, and I would run I had a very specialized overnight camp that I ran in Pennsylvania for soccer. I only took 100 kids. It was, 6 days of the week. Overnight you slept there. Everything, it was in these cabins. It was a great environment. And then every place I was there, back in Jersey, when I came back to play, Colorado, and even here in Kansas City, the whole time I was out in the youth soccer space. I was training teams, working with kids. I was doing all that because of 2 things. One is, so imagine I retired in November of 2002. In 1995, I got my A license, which was the highest license you could get for soccer at the time. I had already gotten in 1995.
Right.
So I was embarking on this career path that I wanted to be a coach. And so I had a goal that I wanted to play till I was 35. I played till I was 36. I'll never forget. So I had played 3 years here for Bob Gansler, and then basically a span of about 3 years for him on the national team. And, Bob was a man of very few words, but when he said something, it had real meaning. And so I had probably I'll even go as far as saying I had 4. In all that time, I had 4 in-depth conversations with Bob in 6 years. And I'm not complaining about that by any means. It also was, part of it was the person, part of it was the time. You either did your job or you weren't playing. As simple as could be. And so you knew where you stood and you knew what you had to do. And if you weren't playing well, it also was your responsibility to figure out why and start doing it if you want to stick around. And so I had a conversation when I was with the national team 2 times. I had one big conversation with him the first year because we were like, I don't know, 8-0. Because I don't know if you know that year in 2000, we went undefeated in the first 12 games of the season.
Right.
And we were whatever. We won 8 games in a row or whatever we did. And we were definitely undefeated. And he was thinking about changing the team around to give some of the younger kids who were in the team game after game after game a rest. And he could see that I was I didn't say anything about it, but he probably could see body language. I wasn't, happy with it. And he came and talked to me about it afterwards and asked me, hey, what's going on? And I used my line my dad always used. If you want my opinion, I'm going to tell it to you. So you sure you really want it? And so he said, I said, I think we should stay with the same lineup. I said, I don't think there's any reason to change. I said, I'll make sure those younger guys in the back are good, and we should just keep going with it. And, he gave it some thought, and I'm not saying that I was the influence to it, but, we had that conversation and went back with the same lineup, and we went on with four more games, and we did really well. And so my 4th conversation with him was 2002, season's done. I had a rib, broke my rib in training. Goalkeeper, not Miola, actually, Boashani, kneed me right in my rib. I was going up on a offensive corner kick, and he came out and just crushed me. Any rate, came back. I played. I finished out the season, and at the end of the season, I call you in and talk to you about, whatever, what are you going to do next year and all that stuff. He comes in and he goes, and he used to call me Petros, which is kind of a nickname because Bob was born in Hungary.
Right.
But he's really German descent, but his family spoke German and all that stuff. But anyway, in Hungary, they use the word, they use the nickname Petros, where he's like, come in, he's like, Petros. Just like this. He says, look, I'm going to go with a younger guy, so I'm not going to bring you back. New York is interested in you. Oddly enough, Bob Bradley was the coach. And he said, if you want to go there, I won't stand in your way, and I'll make it really easy for you to go from a trade perspective and blah, blah, blah. And so I tried that. I wanted a 2-year deal there. I didn't want to go for 1 because I was going to move my family back with me, but 1 year didn't seem right to me. They wouldn't give me 2. They would give me a 1-year option. And I finally just said, you know what? It's time for me to move on to my next phase of my career. And I will tell you that I absolutely never, the second I said that I was done, and I was on to the next phase of my career. Didn't have the itch to now play another game. The The only thing I would say when I stopped playing, I missed two things. I missed the locker room, and I missed the strategy that was put in place to then get ready to play the next opponent, and then how that played out. Like, I missed that, that planning stage. I really missed that, and those were the two things. But they're pretty. Those two things are pretty easy to get back.
Before we'll probably do one more of these sometime, and we'll talk more in depth about this. Coach, you're a busy man, and it'll take another hour to do all the sporting. But there are just so many stories of your intensity and your unbelievable drive to succeed, even to the extent of, battling with teammates and things like that. Did you feel, and you're always the captain, did you feel like, how did that incredible intensity, did it always go over fairly well, or were there times when teammates were like, this is too much, this guy's got to calm down a little bit or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, no, it didn't go over well a lot. It didn't. But I'm not one to. I'm being very honest with these comments, and I still believe it today. I didn't really care. Look, I'm not. We're all human, right?
Right.
Everybody wants people to like them. Nobody wants to be, unliked or nobody wants to be the bad guy or whatever. Nobody wants that. I didn't either. But you got to remember, this was my profession. This is the thing I love to do. I love the game, but there's another thing. The other is that I truly so I ask a question in all of my interviews with all players that I interview, right? To someday maybe a prospective player to come to our club. And I always ask the question, I always ask it this way. I say, which one do you prefer? Do you love to win or do you hate to lose? And that response tells me what the mentality of the player is and where they are best suited on the field. Are you an attacker or are you a defender? I hate to lose. I just hate it. I can't tell you. It's if I lose a game, I cannot get away from that feeling until I play the next game, and if I win that next game, the interesting thing is that I am happy for about 5 minutes.
But you're just happy you didn't lose.
Exactly. Because that moment, as soon as that game is over with, I'm thinking about that next opponent, and I do not want to be back in that place of losing. And so you're doing everything you can to make sure that doesn't happen. So, yeah.
Is it true that your wife didn't let you play board games with your children? I read that in a story. Is that true?
It's not so much she didn't let me, but even today, we were just on vacation, both my kids,
right.
Over Christmas time, and my kids came and we were in Florida, and they came and visited, and we played a board game, and there's always something that happens. But the fact of the matter is that it's very difficult for me to, I can't, the easiest way to say it is if I'm not doing it to win, then I don't know why I'm not doing it.
I totally understand that.
And and I can't back off of that. But I also think that comes from my father, because I can tell you that in my garage when I was a little kid, we had a ping pong table, and we would play. I remember being 8, 9, 10 years old, and my dad beat me 21-0. and I remember crying. I remember playing card game in Hungary, 9 years old, with my dad, his brother, and so my uncle and my aunt, and my dad yelling at me for why did I throw that card down? And by the way, we weren't playing as teams. Why did I throw that card down that helped someone else? So I think that was just a part of my life. And so, yeah, I hate to lose. And so, yes, I do think that there's a lot of players that I probably rubbed the wrong way. Chris Klein.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story with him when I first came to Kansas City, and you got to remember, Kansas City was last place team in the league when I came here as well. Because so I came in 2000, 1999, they were last place team in the league. So I'm going from Colorado, last place team in the league. When I first got there, we went to the final. Come here, last place team in the league. So now we're in preseason training, and we're training really hard. But I'm a vocal guy, right? I'm a very vocal guy, especially even when I'm playing in the game on the team.
Right.
And so Chris, talks to his wife, and she says, "How's everything going?" It's like, whatever, a weekend. And he tells her, things are pretty interesting. And it's like, we got all these new players, and I really think we got something here. It's going to be pretty exciting. He goes, but I just don't know if I can handle this Peter Vermes the whole year, because all he does is yell at people. And so I understand that, but it was just who I was, and I wasn't going to – I was going to do whatever I could to help us win.
And that's who you are as a coach, too. And, I don't play for you. It's always struck me that playing for you would be an incredibly rewarding experience, but it might not be that much fun. Would you say that might be an accurate description of it? If somebody let me put it this way. If somebody ever called you a player's coach, would you punch them in the nose?
No, and you know what? See, I will tell you this. I think this is what I'd say. I actually think it's great to play for me. And I mean this, and I'll tell you why. Because it's really simple. I think you've heard me talk about this, or you've at least seen them around here before. There's 4 core values to the culture that we have here. The first is you have to be team first. There's not a guy there's no individuals on the team. It's about the team always for me. For me and for all the players. It's not about an individual. It's about the team. That's first. The second thing is that I expect people to have incredible work ethic. If you're just doing this and you're giving me half of what you have, you shouldn't be here. You don't deserve to be here. Simple to me. Just come here and give it everything you have. The third thing is that I expect intelligence. I don't expect guys to go out and perform brain surgery on Monday. I'm expecting that when we implement a game plan and you have a role and a responsibility in that you are working towards implementing that into the game. That's what I'm talking about, intelligence. And then the final piece is it's winning mentality, but more importantly, it's defined as the pursuit of excellence in everything that you do. Now, I know that some guys that are here, they don't have every one of those core values down. So let's take the pursuit of excellence in everything. So you might walk into one of our guys' apartments and it might be an absolute mess. But when he's here and he's around us, let's hope that he's a really good actor and he can fake it for as long as he can, that he's organized, that he's respectful of the environment, that he's not leaving his water bottles or his plate after breakfast or lunch just hanging out there, that he's taking responsibility for that. And those are the things, those are the characteristics that I'm looking for. So for me, it's very easy to play for me because it's not this complicated idea or what have you. If you can do those things, obviously the guys we're bringing here they can play. The question is now, can you follow through on those other core values? And if you can, then I think I'm actually a really easy guy to play for.
Kind of seems obvious just from the outside that, who doesn't embrace that because they aren't here very long. So you're just like, well, that guy probably didn't want to work that hard or whatever.
Well, I think the other thing, though, too, is there are guys that aren't here because their ambitions grew outside of here.
Right.
And so I've always maintained that I'm not going to be the one to decide if Sporting Kansas City is going to be your last place. I think the player is going to tell me that in his words and his actions. That's how I'm going to know. And so I'm not here to cap somebody out. If a player says, "Hey, I'm really interested, and we'll take Kyrie Shelton.
Right.
And that's the most recent one. Kyrie had an incredible desire to go overseas and play. It was like a dream to him.
Mm-hmm.
And who am I to stop him from his dream?
Right,
and
right.
so I had offered him a new deal last year, and but I give him a lot of credit. He was very respectful and upfront with me. And he said, "Look, Coach, I've always wanted to do this, and I'm in a position to be able to do it right now. So I'm going to take that chance." And I said, "Then I wish you the best of luck, but just know that if you ever want to come back, give me a call." And we actually reached out to him because we saw that there might be an opportunity, and he was like, "I'd love to come back," and now he's back here again. And so he fulfilled that dream, but I think I now have a more committed guy than ever before because he fulfilled that dream, and now he knows that this is where he wants to be.
You mentioned that you hate losing maybe more than you love winning, but in close to conclusion, you won the ultimate prize in MLS on that bitter cold night. I was outside for it.
Cold.
I wish I was playing.
Yeah.
But how much were you able to enjoy that, the ultimate prize in MLS soccer?
Yeah, I did enjoy it from this point of view. When I won it as a player, it was tremendous, right? It was great. But I have to say it's not the same as winning as a coach. And the reason being is because when you're a player, you're a part of a team for sure, and you have a role to play. And you have to be good for the team to be successful. But most of that responsibility you have is for yourself. When you're the coach, there's all these pieces and parts that have to be right for you to get to that place, to have that opportunity, and then eventually excel there. And that is an incredibly rewarding time when you sit back and you say, man, all the things we had to recruit the right guys. We had to make sure they were fit. We had to make the right decisions game after game plans, player selection, staff members. Are they the right people to work with the players? You can go on and on and on. And when you get that right, it's so fulfilling because, man, it took a lot of work to do that. And then that's one. The other is getting all of those people to believe in that same thing and to accomplish that goal. That's pretty cool. And I always think it's great. If you even just look at when the Chiefs just won here,
mm-hmm.
right? And you listen to all the players, so much of it is, it's obviously it's their perspective, but so much of it is the same thing year after year. When somebody else wins a championship, somebody else won the Super Bowl a year ago, those players are saying a lot of the same things. Hey, the way we came together, the focus of the group, everybody says a lot of the same things because that's what happens to be able to actually accomplish that goal. And when you do it, it's an incredible feeling because it doesn't happen all the time. And when you get it and you've experienced it, I think for the ones, and that's why the Michael Jordans are just so special, is because he was able to go after that and accomplish that time and time again, which is not easy, but to stay so consistent at that level. And that's why Bill Russell has to go down as probably the best champion ever for me. To win 11 championships, that's absolutely unbelievable. And to sustain that level, and then what happened to the Celtics after he left, like just the next year, it tells you so much about the individual, but how much an effect he had on the group. But I go back to it, coaching, what you encompass to get there is incredible, and everybody's on the same page. It's an exciting time.
At the outset of the part one, when we talked about your youth, you mentioned how much you loved the game and that your world was consumed with soccer. It's brought you so much. You've brought so much to it. You've created this environment here. We're sitting here in this fabulous Pinnacle Sports Complex right now, training, whatever its official name is, super-duper place for soccer. Is all of this sort of everything you might have dreamed of? Reaching tremendous heights as a player, playing in the World Cup, being an MLS Cup champion as a player and as a coach, and then creating this atmosphere here in Kansas City. Is it? I mean, I know you're not ready to think about your legacy, but you certainly are creating one.
We all dream, right? We all have dreams. When I was obviously a little kid, I always wanted to be a professional soccer player. Did I know what that really was? Not necessarily. I mean, I knew parts of it, but I didn't know. So my answer is absolutely not. I've far surpassed the things that I would have ever expected to have done. People that I would have met, relationships that I've made, and to be able to continue to keep doing what it is that I love to do is it's something that personally I don't take for granted. I never have. I truly feel that I'm incredibly fortunate to do what I do. I have an incredible amount of appreciation and respect for all of the owners in Major League Soccer, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. Players wouldn't be able to play the game. And I think there's a lot of times that we forget that because those families have made an incredible commitment. And everybody always talks about the financial aspect. If you look at our ownership group here, how committed they are to the club, the amount of time they spend on it, it's unbelievable when they don't need to. It's not like they need this to live their life, right? Their current life, but they're so into this, and we are so lucky to be a part of that. And I don't forget that. It's why when I come to this place and you're talking about how great it is, for me coming here every day, I know how lucky I am. I don't expect this stuff, right? I didn't have this stuff coming up as a professional player. To be in this every day now, I know how fortunate I am. The sad thing is, and this is never going to be accomplished, the sad thing is there are guys that come in here this year, young kids, right? We had 2 draft picks. They come here. There's no doubt that they think this is great. But they really don't know how great it is, because this is the only thing they know. And for me, that's the sad thing, because when anybody walks in, they just see it this way, but they really don't know where it started and where it is today. And I think that history is so important to the success of a club long term. And it's one of the things that I try to continue on here, because I want, and this isn't just on the technical side, I want anyone who works for the club to understand that there is a history here. And interestingly enough, I do a retreat every year with the technical staff, right? And I usually show a video. I had to pull the video this year because the video was like 27 minutes long. That's not something normally you kick off a retreat event with, a 27, but it's about the history of this club. And so I'm trying to figure out what vehicle do I use to actually show that to a group of people at some point, because the history is so important. And I want everybody to remember what it is, because our sport has a long way to go still, but we've accomplished so much in a short period of time. I want people to understand that you need to keep working for this, because a lot's been accomplished, but we got so much more potential.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.